The honourable member from Lethbridge.
The Prime Minister promised to make housing more affordable for Canadians, but we know that wasn't totally true. After 8 years of this Liberal government, rent has doubled, housing prices have skyrocketed. In fact, they've doubled as well. And mortgage payments, of course, have gone through the roof. In fact, today, Scotiabank confirmed that mortgage rates have increased by 2% just due to this government's overspending. No other factors considered, just this government's overspending. Mortgage rates have gone up by 2%, which means on average $700 a month extra on a family's mortgage. When will this government do the responsible thing, rein in their spending, so that Canadians can afford to put a roof over their head?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, in order to address the national housing crisis, we're making the investments necessary to get Canada building again. And I have good news for my colleague. It is working. When we look at the Statistics Canada report from yesterday, we see significant increases in the investments in residential construction. In fact, the heading of the section from the report is entitled Strong Gains in Residential Investment, indicating a nearly 8% increase just this past month. We have a plan to continue to cut costs for home builders and to make the investments necessary to get the homes built that the economy and that families who live in it need.
The honourable member from Lethbridge.
I'm not sure what Liberal report the honourable member is reading from, but the stat is this. Actually, fewer homes are being built, and investment in the market is down by 14% for new construction. So that's the fact. And out of that, then, rent is doubling for Canadians, mortgages are skyrocketing, and housing prices have also doubled. Canadians can't afford to house themselves. In fact, their mortgage rates are up on average by $700 a month, and that is only due to this government's overspending. Just due to their overspending alone, $700 a month. No other factors considered, just their overspending. When will they rein it in, do the responsible thing, and allow Canadians to afford a roof over their head?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, with respect to my honourable colleague, she just does not have her numbers right. She is entitled to her own opinion, but certainly not to her own facts. I will tell you specifically what the Stats Canada, which is not some Liberal organization, it operates independently. They indicated this month investment in residential building went up 7.3%. Single-family home investment increased 6.4%. Multi-unit construction rose 8.2%. Mr. Speaker, if the Conservatives are concerned about the housing crisis, why are they committing to cut funding for home building and to raise taxes on home builders?
The honourable member from Edmonton Riverbend.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, rent has doubled, house prices have doubled, and mortgage payments are up 150%. Just now, Statistics Canada shows that investment in housing construction is down 14%. Turns out that photo ops with the housing minister in hard hats don't actually build homes. Who knew? Will the government end their photo ops so Canadians can get houses built?
The Honourable Minister for Housing.
Mr. Speaker, I find it fascinating when there are accusations about using photo ops for political gain, when the leader of the Conservative Party, when he was a minister, actually violated election rules for a photo op where he showed up wearing a Conservative Party logo on behalf of the government of Canada. Mr. Speaker, with respect to my honourable colleague, he has the facts wrong. Stats Canada is indicated that we are actually seeing an increase in housing investments when it comes to the residential sector. Housing starts are up. In fact, we are on pace to build more than 50,000 additional homes over and above the record that the Conservatives achieved while they were in government.
Absolutely. The honourable member from Edmonton Riverbend.
Mr. Speaker, you know what, Mr. Speaker? When the Conservative leader was Minister of Housing, a typical family home cost only $450,000. Investment in housing construction is down 14% under this minister. Rent has doubled, house prices have doubled, and mortgage payments are up 150%. Again, will the government end their photo op so Canadians can get houses built?
While the member from Edmonton Riverbend was asking his question, it was difficult for the Speaker to hear because of a conversation that was having at the far end of the House. I'm going to ask all members, please, to keep your voices down, to take your microphone when the Speaker recognizes you, to either ask or to answer a question. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that the Conservatives like to make up facts, but I didn't realize that they were trying to make a new way of doing math. When Statistics Canada says that housing starts are up 7%, that does not equal a decrease of 14%. I would encourage the members opposite to look at the Stats Canada report, but we understand that they don't have a lot of respect for Stats Can because it was them when they were in government that cut the long-form census because they don't like to make policy based on data because then they can actually realize that they're making bad policy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Kenora.
After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, we know this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. He's planning to quadruple the carbon tax on gas, groceries, and home heating, but our common sense plan is to axe the tax to bring home lower prices. Mr. Speaker, today the government has an opportunity. Will they include in today's mini budget a plan to finally stop their carbon tax hikes?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative Party pretends to offer certain principles, and if you don't like those, they have other principles. In their 2008 platform, and I quote, "We will work to develop and implement a North America-wide cap-and-trade system for greenhouse gases and air pollution." In their 2021 platform that they all ran on, they said, and I quote, "We recognize that the most efficient way to reduce our emissions is the use of pricing mechanisms." My goodness, given the flip-flopping on that side of the House, how do Canadians believe anything these folks say?
Order. The honourable member from Kenora.
Mr. Speaker, the simple fact is that this government's plan just isn't working. They continue to miss climate target after climate target. They're only driving up the cost of living for Canadians. And in Northern Ontario, we cannot afford to pay more for gas and home heating. But the Liberal and NDP politicians across Northern Ontario continue to leave their residents out in the cold. So I will ask again, will we see in today's mini budget a plan from this government to finally cancel their carbon tax hikes?
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to correct a record. The Harper government didn't meet any of the environmental targets that they have. We are on track, 85% to meet our 2030 targets. We have 6 years left, Mr. Speaker, to get there, and we will meet the interim 2026 targets. We are meeting our targets when it comes to climate change, when it comes to protecting nature, when it comes to phasing out plastic pollution. They don't believe in any of this, Mr. Speaker. They want to increase pollution in Canada, not on this side of the House. We're working for Canadians, for the health of Canadians, for the future of our kids and grandkids, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Bellechasse, les Etchemins-Lévis.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Banque Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Scotiabank experts have calculated that the government overspending adds 2 percentage points to interest rates in Canada, and it's Canadians who are struggling to pay their mortgage rates that are paying the price. This government has never tabled a balanced budget. Will the government announce a plan to balance the budget today so that interest rates can come down and Canadians can stay in their homes? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, Conservatives who try to blame the federal government for inflation have a difficult task ahead of them. The report that my colleague is quoting says that COVID supports and government expenditures from provincial governments are responsible for these increases, not federal government expenditures. My colleague is a former member of the Quebec Legislative Assembly. Is she saying that we should demand that provinces spend less? Is that her conclusion?
L'honorable député de Bellechasse-les-Etchemins, Lévis.
Avec respect, je la ramène à la...
With respect, I'll bring her back to reality. The economic situation is such that a young man from Sherbrooke has to spend winter in a tent because there's no access to affordable housing. The costly Liberal Bloc coalition wants to radically increase the carbon tax, which is going to raise the price of everything. It costs a lot to vote for the Bloc. We're asking the government to cancel carbon tax increases, balance the budget, build housing, and not bureaucracy. Will the Minister of Finance surprise us and balance the budget and give us some hope? The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change. What's disappointing for many people watching us is to see that the member who once defended carbon pricing, who stood up for fighting climate change, has flip-flopped and now is part of a party that no longer believes in climate change, doesn't believe in protecting the environment for our children and grandchildren. That's what Canadians find disappointing.